Welcome to the Her Spirit 50/50 What is Possible podcast, powered by Activ.AI, where each week we'll tackle the big questions surrounding women's health, sports and physical activity, uncovering the barriers, challenging the status quo, and exploring the bold steps needed to level the playing field. Thanks to Activ.AI, the platform using wearable technology and AI to enable a more active world. We'll be bringing you bold conversations, data-driven insights, and real change. Hello everyone, I'm Holly Woodford and I am a self-confessed women's health warrior, tech-obsessed tinker, unapologetic soapbox superstar and adrenaline junkie for all things active. My secret weapon, turning my endless curiosity into a full-blown lifestyle adventure. And joining me is my brilliant partner in crime and Her Spirit co-founder, Mel Berry. Mel is a marketing maestro with a Rolodex that could rival Hollywood's A-list. She swims faster than a speedboat on a caffeine binge and has an uncanny ability to charm anyone into trying the wildest of activities. And together, we're here each week to shake things up and reimagine what is possible.
So today's guest is Grace McNamara. Grace is a founder, CEO, board director, and DEI advocate with over 20 years of leadership in health, fitness, and technology. Grace's mission is to transform population health through innovative partnerships and tech-driven solutions. Grace has spent 12 impactful years at Apple, leading health and fitness initiatives before becoming CEO at EXI, a med tech company tackling chronic conditions and inactivity through exercise. She now divides her time between London, Ireland, Europe, and the US. Grace also advises boards such as the US Physical Activity Alliance and Europe Active while pursuing her passion in learning and mentoring. Grace is the founder of The Collective and recently published a white paper called Tackling the Global Inactivity Crisis, Unlocking the Female Consumer's Potential to Shape the Future of Our Health. Grace, welcome to the Her Spirit 50/50 What is Possible podcast.
Thank you, Mel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Grace, for those of you that might not know you or The Collective, can you just share with our listeners what inspired you to start it and why is staying active such a really vital part of your life?
Yeah, thank you. So the Collective, the realistic story is that when I came back from the US in the summer, I was kind of resetting this. I'm really looking at, well, where am I really passionate? I'm lucky I came back to Ireland from Boston, where I was previously. I came back to my sports here in Ireland, joined back up with my sports team, who I'd committed to pretend that I'm 18 for as long as possible. And I was going back to, I really want to make a difference in the world of health, and I've always been that journey, but I see more and more barriers for women, and I'm very passionate about solving for the ones that I see, that I've experienced, but also the ones that I've never experienced. I see other women more so seeing those barriers. And actually part of my passion often is where I end up looking at my friends and my colleagues and seeing we could have avoided some of this, some of these health situations, or we could have avoided some of the inactivity situations and so on. So I want to kind of take down the barriers, because I think some of them are self-created, as well as some of them are created by society that we should be actively tackling. So I'm definitely going to be tearing into that. And that's part of the Collective, really, is where we said, doing it as one person, as we know, you make a little ground, but doing that as a collective of women from across the world, we can make an awful lot more impact, and we can have an awful lot better education around the stories and the success and the metrics in there. And I do believe we're in echo chambers a lot of the time. I think you guys are probably the same, where you look at a conversation that you have and the audience is possibly all the same, ethnicity and gender and possibly location. And one of the beauties of, because of what I've built, and my life has been quite global, and it's looking at conversations across the gender sphere, as well as the world, as well as cross sectors, from sports, activity, health tech, med tech, technologies, healthcare, and so on. So I do believe we have solutions at our fingertips, but without having a conversation with a broad mindset, that we end up having the echo chamber, we're not going to solve anything on a global basis. But lots to solve, and hence I said, let's go ahead into it and see how much I can help.
It's incredible to hear you talk, Grace, because I've been following you for some time. I think I might be a bit of a fangirl, actually, because that whole global health, technology, physical activity and the importance, it's a really significant area, isn't it? And it's just really interesting to see what you've been doing. And I have been a good schoolgirl and I have read your white paper. And if you haven't read it, everyone, go to the Collective and have a read. It's really interesting, actually, because one of the things that really jumped out to me was actually what you say in that is that the global wellness economy is booming.
It's absolutely booming. It really is booming. Like, we're never before are spending so much money on our health, right? And in not just one way. You know, activity and exercise is one pillar, but we've never spent so much money. I'm pretty sure you guys are the same. Your phone is probably full of apps, everything from nutrition to mindfulness to sleep. We've never had so much data. We've never had so much science. And as women, like, I know we're still lacking and we have an awful lot more research to do, but we've never had such a time where we've had more and more research being released. We're now finally talking about and understanding menopause. We know more about pregnancy and activity than we ever did before. We know more about endometriosis, even though we're only scratching the surface around a condition that affects a phenomenal number of women. We are starting to see the impacts of nutrition and sleep and all that on many different facets. Yeah, I think it's fascinating when we look at the data and the science, but we have an opportunity now to capitalize on the conversation more than ever. And it's not because lack of data, even though I do believe there's still an awful lot more data to come and a lot more research to come, but we have enough to really drive into helping ourselves and taking ownership of it.
Yeah, and I've been a good schoolgirl as well and read it. And one of the things that I love is every menopausal woman 100% should be active. So brilliant. But one of the other things I was really interested in is the gap widens with age. So if you're a 55-plus-year-old woman, the gap widens to 13% from 9%. Why do you think the older we become, the less active we want to be as women?
Well, but think of the traditional story, right? You got to a certain age and you just weren't active anymore because you were too busy minding the kids, for example, and then you were working, trying to get back into it. And statistically, we look at, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and you got to a certain point you weren't active, which meant that your health was deteriorating. It's nearly accepted that you get to a certain age and your health deteriorates. That's crap. That's not the evidence. We need to stop, completely stop the mentality of you get to a point and you get less active and you get less healthy. Absolutely not. I mean, we've had plenty of stories that people have been active and healthy up until, literally in their 90s and 100s until they, hit a wall. But I think we need to completely change the narrative and be like, it's your life and it's your health and it's your activity and it's your schedule and it's your day to day, and be like, what do you need to be active and healthy and happy? And then put the structures in place. And the only thing I'd say as well on that one, Mel, is that we should do that ideally 20 years earlier, and not like when you hit the 56, you're going, oh crap, now I have pains in my bones because I haven't been minding myself or whatever. It's make that plan as early as possible, but it's never too late to start. And that's what I enjoy about the menopause research at the moment. Is the strength training we know is fundamental. Every single woman, regardless of age, needs to be strength training, regardless, whether it's 15 or 50 or 80, every single woman needs strength training. It's never too late to start. So anyone who's listening is like, start now. This doesn't matter where your baseline is, start and it works. But I do believe we have to change our perception of the norm, of that it's just normal to get less active and less healthy. I mean, that's crap. Absolute crap.
Just, picking up on that point, I'm really interested in this kind of conversation because I think it's really important, because I'm not yet convinced, despite the fact that there's a lot of reports and data that talk about these issues, people really understand what the nature of the problem is. And, a report, it talks about this booming wellness environment, but actually physical activity is not tracking that way. It's actually lagging behind. Just some of the things that you've said there. What do you think the root cause of that? Is this something systemic that's happening, that women aren't getting the same opportunities, the same investment? Or do you think this is actually more about us as individuals and the choices that we're making day to day? Where do you think the root cause of this problem, and it is a problem, isn't it? Because we know that the health gap for women is massive, it's growing, and it's having a huge effect, not just on health, but actually the economy as well, which is why I think people are starting to get really interested in this topic.
Yeah, there's both really, Holly. I think the systemic part is huge, right? If we look at, we've now had more cars on the road than ever. We choose to try the gym. Myself, I will walk and I will run around the pitch for you after a ball for 90 minutes, no question. but I will drive to the gym and try to park at the closest possible parking spot to the door. It's
Do
not
you
always.
also go to the supermarket and try and park in the closest possible car parking space to the door?
I go shopping too much. I'm not a chef. And far from it. I've chosen that as one of my least activity to do. But the system is important, right? First off, we know that it's important that we look at the full end-to-end day-to-day. So this is across genders, right? We need to be able to walk to school. Less and less kids are able to walk to school. We need to be able to walk to work. Less and less of us are walking to work. We know that a lot of us now are living on the outskirts of the city, commuting in, which means we spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours even in our cars, going in different directions. It's getting better. We're getting on buses, and it's getting better. We're getting on trains. Realistically, we're still not active. We are getting more cycle lanes. So hats off to every government who's investing in cycle lanes. You cannot put enough cycle lanes, in my opinion. And if we can make cities more walkable, I'm a massive believer. Like in London, like as an example, London's a lovely city to walk, right? It's absolutely lovely, but it's also mad busy with traffic. And I prefer to walk with fresher air than not. So I think we need to look at the system. Yes, everything you do from the time you get up in the morning, the time you get back into bed at nighttime, how active is your day? And I do believe we've engineered out activity of our lives. And I think we need to re-engineer activity and back into our lives. And yes, I'm a big techie. I'm also a big believer of put down the phone. Actually, I'm loving the voice control, for example. I do an awful lot more like audiobooks now, so I'm not physically looking at the screen. I talk to my stereo. My stereo talks to me in relation to news and so on. So I think we need to re-engineer not be in front of a screen back into our lives as well. And that's for all ages. You know, that's literally for every age. But it's easier said than done. And that's one of the things we do with the Activity Alliance in the US is bring together the different parts of society, whether it's education, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's, cycling and the American Medical Association's private individuals in there, this public sector. So it's bringing all of this together because it is systemic. We need our societies to be healthier in general, and that will help. And then from a personal angle, and I know, Holly, I have controversial opinions on this one at times, right? Which I think we talked about briefly. You know, we need to make decisions for ourselves, and we need to make sure that self-care is not seen as selfish. And women, we are the worst possible group to do things for ourselves. Like a friend of mine's running a business where she does, moms and babies, and she said everything is advertised for the kids because otherwise moms wouldn't show up. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like it's mom and baby yoga. I'm like, but really the baby's just lying there, right? She's like, yeah, absolutely. It's just yoga for mom. And she's like, I have to make sure that it's designed for the baby, otherwise mom wouldn't show up. I'm like, we've got to change the narrative, and then we have to start to think of our lives and plan it out a little bit. And I like overarching plans. Like when I'm in my 20s, I think we're all the same, right? Your 20s is about education and getting into your career path and driving on and thinking about where you're going to go with your life. Your 30s is a big, massive, fundamental shift. But we have to take ownership of what the plan is from there on out, because we don't have the luxury of just winging it. We really don't. So, we need to make sure if we're finding a partner, what does that mean? Are you looking at marriage and babies? Because that's a massive impact. Who is minding the child? Are you a stay-at-home mom? Is he a stay-at-home dad? Do you have enough resources that you can go back to work full time and not end up feeling guilty? Again, likewise, the guilt factor is huge. We need to be able to put those plans in place. And I don't want to like victim shame here. So we need to put the plans in place and then plan around it. Because and I'm lucky, right? I've been at Apple for 12 years, as I mentioned, and when that Sheryl Sandberg book came out, Lean In, during that time, it says I'm like, kind of didn't even get it because I was like, what do you mean? And there was glass ceilings. Like, I don't know what a glass ceiling is. And I was very lucky at Apple, to be fair, in the HQ in Cork. The leader there was Kathy Carney, phenomenal leader, and half that team, give or take, were gender balanced and ethnicity balanced. And like, there was none of them you could look at and go, didn't deserve their place at that leadership. Like it was absolute powerhouse. And I was looking up at access to, seeing a pathway right from entry level at a college right up to a senior VP of operations for one of the biggest companies in the world. And I didn't have sticky floors either, another term that was here. And I was like, what does that mean? Some of this is nearly self-created. If we think we have a glass ceiling, we might give ourselves a glass ceiling. But I made the decision early in my career to be like, I'm a career woman. I don't, I prefer my career and making an impact in the world versus having my own kids. So I made this conscious decision. I agree it's not for everyone, but I also then didn't have any excuses for myself to go with, you can't, go on and create the path that you want to create. And then I kind of take it at the ownership piece of that going, okay, for those that do create, to make the decision to have kids and step out of the workplace for a while, I'm like, okay, well then it's on me to have responsibility, pick up some of the weight here. Like a team player, right? It's like, if somebody's not at the table, it's like, it's my job now to help make sure that when that person comes back to the workplace, that there's still a pathway and that there's no glass ceiling. So I kind of feel like it's a bit of I tag me in kind of scenario. Let me take up the mantle of getting rid of that glass ceiling, that sticky floor perception, and that hopefully we can get to more equality.
Yeah, and that quality piece in your report, it talks about only 4% of women currently engage in sport. I mean, I was just shocked by how low that is. Why do you think that is, and how important do you think role models are? And I'm not talking about the elite athlete. I'm talking about people like you, because you're a role model for your niece, aren't you?
Trying to be, at least, yeah. I'm trying to break all of the norms, not getting married, not having kids, playing sports, contact physical sport until well in my 40s. Yes, I'm trying to break all the norms because it's possible. But I think you're right there. The beauty for me with sport is, I've played sports from a very young age. I'm lucky. I'm tall and athletic. I've never had, an issue, a reason not to be. But the friendships I created in sport is what was the hook for me. I mean, I made some of my best friends when I was a teenager, and they're still my best friends today. And I get emotional because I'm like, I haven't seen them in a while. I was connected up again. The kids. But the 4% is phenomenal now, because again, we had stereotypes and perceptions that once you had babies, it wasn't safe to play sport. With that, we know is crap now as well. We have better, thankfully, equipment coming to the market, even though we still need much better equipment for women coming back in. And to the point where obviously we know pelvic floor isn't as strong, and let's be fair, the sports nappies available now, which sounds like awful, but that's the reality. We need better sports bras. Also, shout out to the sports industry. I'm keep pushing that at the moment. We do not have good enough sports bras, especially for coming back after breastfeeding. And I'm thinking of feedback from friends of mine. So we need to do two things. It's like going back to the kind of the stereotype that's there, that once you hit a certain age, you're not active in sports. You should be active for your life. You might change sport, and you might choose not to pretend that you're 18 and be full contact physical sport. But you need to be active. So I think for me, the sport angle, where we should have more women coming back into sport, whether they're taking a time out or not, is because it's not just about the activity. It's about the social connection. It's about the mental health. It's about the support group. We need more support groups. And I think that's very evident. The evidence is also clear. We do not network and support each other the same way men do. It requires an awful lot different relationship. We develop relationships deeper, but less of them. And sometimes it may not be as deep a relationship, which is okay, as long as we're still expanding our support network. And I think we need to be intentional around having who is the support system. So if I'm going to go back and I say, me going back into team sports, and my teammates, some are bringing their kids to the sideline and they're okay with that. We're all okay with that. Some of them are bringing their husbands to mind and kids while they're training. Again, they're the role models for their kids. We need to put the systems in place, but it's about, again, being intentional of taking priority for your health and activity and mindset, and they're saying to their partners and their families or whatever, and saying, this is important to me, not just because I want to be physically active, for my mental health as well as for my social interaction, to take care of myself. And I think I can say it one more time. Self-care is not selfish. And I think we have to land that message so much for women, because it's just, we're the world's worst for taking care of ourselves, but yet taking care of everybody else at the same time. We're expecting so much of ourselves. It's unfair.
And I think self-care also, in terms of how it's currently positioned, I think in terms of attitudes and even that global health kind of market, feels like it's quite passive as well. So actually physical activity, I don't think is actually a conversation that often comes up in this thing called self-care. It's going to sit and meditate, go for a walk, which actually obviously has a lot of physical activity benefits. But I feel that there is this thing around, go in the bath, light some candles, find the time for yourself. And I think all of that is really important. But I think the role of physical activity and self-care is completely underplayed and probably misunderstood. I know one of the biggest factors I think we all find is that, at the end of a long day, you're tired, you don't think you've got any energy, and the desire and the pull to sit on the sofa to watch Netflix or the multitude of other streaming kind of subscriptions that you may or may not have is really strong. But actually, the truth of it is, you're much more likely to have more energy if you go out for a walk or go for a run or go to that training session if you are part of sport. So I think there's a really big job to do around actually helping people understand about self-care in a broader term. And interestingly enough, I'm not so surprised at that stat actually around the number of women playing sport. And the reason is because when you, certainly the UK, and I'm interested, Grace, to understand what's happening in the US, for example, on this, but here in the UK, girls are dropping out of school sport throughout primary school and secondary school. Two-thirds of girls have dropped out by the age of 16. You go to university maybe, or you go into your first job, or you do an apprenticeship, and then maybe you have children, your career starts. It's not surprising that so few women are actually taking part in sport. And just picking up on that conversation about, what are the root causes, what's systemic, what's to the individual. What would you say to someone who says, look, I hear everything that you say. I get it. I'm doing the things I think I'm in control of, but I just don't have time. I've got a busy job. I've got a family. I don't see how I can fit any more or any activity into my life. You tell me how you think that can happen.
Yeah. And just to your point around the sports piece, I'm actually currently in the middle of doing up a book for our local club here, actually at Camogie, because to your point, like every club, we have a dropout rate, 13, 14, 15, 16, and there's a number of factors that I end up talking to a lot. So I'm happy to share a few of these because I think these are important and universal. I don't think there's been any different.
Grace, what's your club? I don't even know what sport you're playing.
So camogie and football, Gaelic football are my main sports right now.
Awesome.
So back here in Adair in Ireland, in Limerick. So yeah, I'm a big, give me a stick and a helmet and
and run the other way, everyone.
I will chase you around a field after ball. It's the best sport in the world. It's actually considered the fastest field game in the world. Oh, look at Mel, I know.
It's one I made earlier. Anyone that's listening to this, not watching it on video, Mel is now holding, I think, is it a Gaelic?
That's more of lacrosse, I think.
Thank you. Okay.
We explain hurling and camogie as a mix between hockey and lacrosse. That's how we can explain it to people who don't know it.
I get it now.
It's crazy, but it's fabulous. And it's one of those high technical sports. So it means that you end up start playing when you're very young. Because it's so technical, it doesn't mean actually that the stats are any different. You'd think that more technical sports would have higher dropouts. Actually, it doesn't. Once you learn to play the sports, it's got the same dropout rate as other sports. But there's a few things right now that I'm poking the bear on, as I say. So most of our coaches are men, which is consistent across the world for girls sports because dads seem to have more time to coach than moms, even though they're in the same household. We never ask a dad how is he going to manage to coach a team when he has 3 kids, but we do ask that to moms. So we got to figure that one out. But like talking about sports bras to dads and menstrual cycles, and they're like, it's happening. Reality is your daughters at that age or not, but we need to open up the conversation and literally give the conversation to girls and go like, this is okay. This is normal. Again, menstrual cycles are not a taboo topic. You should be open to go if it's impacting you and you want to talk about it, as opposed to just not showing up or dropping out. Have a conversation about it, please. Sports bras is another one. I didn't realize that a friend of mine recently got quite upset. Her daughter is dropping out of sport because she doesn't want to go through the fitting process. She's quite big chested and she's like, it's just easy if I drop out. I'm like, from a sports bra, I'm like, that's ridiculous. So, and then another friend of mine, we were talking about it, and she's like, well, yeah, most of our team actually are big chested women. They've all dropped out. And like, so there's definitely a factor here, which is quite practical, but something we should do, take advantage of, I suppose, and fix. And otherwise, exams, we know girls are fantastic at knuckling down exam times, but we also know the research shows you should be active during exam times. But we see that being another reason why girls are saying that I just need to prioritize my exams. I'm as a coach, I'm like, no, you show up in training twice a week. You need this. This is better for you and for your exams. Trust me. You will thank me later. Your parents thank me later, but do not quit because you're doing exams. Activity helps circulation, helps oxygen to the brain. It helps your memory. It helps your cognition. You'll actually perform better. So the evidence is very clear. Connect those there. And I think we need to be conscious of that. And being very articulate with that, because again, it's easier to go, do you want your exam year? Don't worry about it too much. You could break your hand, and like breaking your hand is not going to be the problem. That'll fix itself, right? That whatever injury you might get playing sport is going to be a small consequence to what you're not going to get if you don't have oxygen to your brain and you're tired and you're stressed, and it's going to be a longer knock-on effect. In terms of the time, and to your point of if you're older, and you've gotten through the years and you've got a busy schedule. I do believe we need to all look at our schedules and just figure out what bits of it we can change. I'm not a believer in TV. I don't ever watch TV except unless I'm working, or I might put it on in the background. But I do believe we should be able to just figure out your day. The week is actually quite long. You think about the 16 hours in the day, give or take, with 8 at work. You've got 8 hours, give or take, by the 7. It doesn't need to be like an hour. It could be 15, 20 minutes. It could be blocks of 5 even. We sort of put some time in around our schedules and then just be okay with it, but telling the plan to your partner or to your whoever your housemates are or whoever your team colleagues are, whatever, that you're able to say, this is important to me. And it doesn't need to be 3-4 hours ago to the gym. It just needs to be on putting in 10 minutes, whatever. But we all own our own schedules. And I can guarantee, I know we're busy, but I do appreciate that the vast majority of people are still doing stuff that isn't impacting them positively, because it might come across as easier. Like, I'm going to sit down and watch this TV program for an hour. I get that might sound good, but actually it's not good for you mentally or physically. So you'd be better off going for a walk, bring out your headphones, call a friend, have a chat at the same time, and see if that, or audiobook or whatever, something that gets you to move more. So I think it's about just prioritizing time a little bit. Appreciate, though, that everyone does feel like time is always a barrier.
Yeah, I think 100%. I think it's that time, and I think it's habit forming. One of the amazing women that's a huge supporter of us is a woman called Dr. Nigat Arif. And Nigat was always a yo-yoer. She never was active consistently, but she got into swimming. She ultimately blames me for her new habit. And it's brilliant to see, because she's actually was my motivator to getting up at 6:30 this morning. And I sent her a picture and she said she was super proud of me. Thanks, Nigat. She said, I hate getting up early, but it's the only time I can get to myself and work out. I would much rather lie in. And that's about prioritization. And we often talk about how women do it for the love of others before we do it for the love of themselves. And we've talked a lot about systems. We've talked a lot about culture, but why are we failing to make progress? Do you think it's an investment piece? Because we hear time and time the lack of investment in women's health. Why are we failing, Grace?
Yeah, we have to over-index to come back to centre on this one. If you ask me, like, we just came out of the Olympics that apparently was the most gender balanced Olympics, but yet when we look at the media coverage, it was not gender balanced. So we did not see the same number of female athletes. We did not spend the same amount of time talking to female athletes. So we didn't have a gender balanced Olympics realistically when you look at them, that side of things. We do not invest the same level of funding in girls in sport. We do not invest the same level of funding in women in activity in sports. And, we're still fighting for, lights in parks, for example, so we can walk safely. It's not equal. So we need to over-index. And I think, and I say over-index, I know we want to get to level playing field, but if we've had 20 years of underfunding, we have to over-index to come back to centre, as I say. We have to strategically look at the impact half population have not had, and look at investments literally around everything from walking in parks to light to street lights to cameras to access to green areas, and to be able to do so in a way that's also looking at where are people living, where are the schools, where are the hospitals, where are the cafes, where are the work buildings, and how do you commute between them, and be systematic around that. We also need to invest better in schools. I feel so sorry for teachers sometimes when I'm looking at their curriculum and it's getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And like, the school system was designed for an era when we all worked in factories. We don't anymore, right? And we know that we're now, 70% of the UK spend on healthcare, for example, is on preventable disease. So the biggest impact there is getting out and being active. And the knock-on effect of being active is that you also more conscious of what you eat. You eat healthier, and then you're typically not going to be smoking. You're typically not going to be drinking more alcohol. So the knock-on impact is huge. So we have to over-index and do it intentionally. So yes, investment is a massive part of it. And it's not just leveling up. That's not going to cut it, because we're so with decades of underfunding. It needs to be over-indexed. Strategically look at a half population, but the half of the population who have got a bigger impact and a bigger influence than many. This is the reality that we mentioned. Women are kind of stuck in the middle now in terms of the sandwich generation. Not only are trying to take care of themselves, which we don't do enough of, but looking at the kids as well as the parents. And in a lot of relationships, it's not just her parents, it's possibly the partner's parents as well. There's an element where I can understand, she's like, I haven't got time. And like, I get it. But then you need to be somewhat selfish, which isn't selfish, and being like, I cannot take care of all of this stuff on my own. There needs to be a different plan. And there needs to be a better support system and a better structure in place. And some of that then is calling for, I need my kids to be active in school. So we need funding towards schools for activity, whether that's before, during, or afterwards. We definitely need more funding there. And it's not just giving more resources to teachers. They're already swamped. The curriculum is packed, and to rethink about the structure of the day. And then likewise, we have a lot of businesses that have on-site gyms and so on, and that's also the best place for them. I know when we were looking at the campus, the Apple campus in London, a couple of years back, I was looking at the gym on site, and there was plenty of gyms in London. Like, yeah, but the one down the corridor is the best one. Doesn't matter what's in it. The fact that it's down the corridor and accessible is the best one. And if it's a walking track, the one that's closest to get started on is the best one. It doesn't matter if it's fancy equipment or fancy lights or whatever. It's the one that's closest to me is the best one. So we need to invest across the ecosystem. And so one of the things, we were saying before this as well, is like the Physical Activity Alliance in the US is a really good structure of bringing all these strands together. Because some of them are happening, but happening in isolation means you don't get the same multiplier effect. And I think that alliance structure is important. And it's not just about physical activity then, it's about health, it's about economics, it's about tech, it's about all of these strands that lead to a healthier life. And obviously I'm over-indexed myself on physical activity because that's my background, it's physiology and fitness. But health is our whole lives, it's everything. It's everything we look, see, do, think, feel, eat. It's all of that stuff. And we need to be systematic about it.
And Grace, why do you think that very little has shifted even in the last couple of years? Because, this type of conversation, this is not the first conversation that's been had. All the things that we've talked about today, girls' experience with school sport, the curriculum, the lack of female coaches, the lack of female leaders in the system. And actually, in the last couple of weeks, 2 reports have come out. One by UK Coaching here in the UK to talk about the fact that in the last 2 years, we've seen a sharp decrease in the number of female coaches, which I think is really concerning, having made some progress. What is going on there? And also a report by Sporting in the UK Sport talking about board leadership. Again, we've seen a reduction in the number of female leaders around those tables. What's going on? Why aren't we creating the strategies? Why aren't we putting the structures in place? Why aren't we aligning the investment? What is the real blockage here? Because there's a lot of good people saying these things, but we're just not making the change.
Yeah, great question. I think there's 2 angles to it. One is we're in echo chambers, right? We're all talking to each other with the same thing. I think you're right. I've had the conversation multiple times. I can guarantee for every time we've had the conversation, there's a cohort of leaders that have never had this conversation and feel like it's not their problem to solve. And I'm a big believer that when I talk to someone, it's like you're either on the fence or the side of the fence that's part of the problem or part of the solution. Being a man that's not affecting you does not fit. You're now a part of the problem. If you're in leadership, whether that's, in the Commons or whatever, if you're in leadership anywhere in the world and you're not intentionally taking action to systematically break the stereotypes and the way it's been done before, you're part of the problem. You have to be intentional on being part of the solution because it's not a woman problem, it's a society problem. And literally, as I say, we have to be more blunt as well, being like, are you intentionally creating positive change? And if you're not, you are actively part of the problem. And I do believe that a lot of people believe that that's not their problem to solve. I say again, craft that societal problem. And you're either literally part of the problem or part of the solution. So I think we need to do that and do it intentionally. And I think that like you look at, there's a really good book written a couple of years ago, talked about research, lots of different research around, women lacking in research and women lacking even in car safety. We have less accidents, but higher injuries because safety belts and car seats aren't designed for women. That hasn't changed. That was 15 years ago. And I know for a fact that the author of that book delivered, if not hand delivered, a book to every single person in Parliament to read. And I can guarantee you the vast majority did not read it because it was written by a woman about women's health. Guarantee it, because and I had to print it a few weeks ago with a regulator for the car auto industry, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I was like, this is scandalous.
What do you think it's going to take to crack this nut? Is it a sledgehammer? Is it more kid gloves? Because that's the question I'm asking myself is, we know all these things are not right and not fair. And I think the book you're talking about is Invisible Women.
Invisible Women, yeah. Well, again, we've all read it.
Yeah. So, and it's incredible when you read it, the world, has been designed, not necessarily intentionally, but nonetheless, it has been designed through a male often physiological kind of perspective. So it's no wonder that actually some of the things we're talking about just haven't really been considered properly, thought about, and actually kind of a part of everyday life. Because all of the problems that you talked about for girls dropping out of school, girls want to be active. Women want to be active in their 50s. We know that. We're getting those messages from women. But what they're telling us is that it's really intimidating. It's really difficult. There's not the right sports clothing. There's not the right opportunities on the doorstep. As you said, the best opportunity is the one down the road, the one you can get to, the one you can access. But actually what's down the road for many women is just not a great experience. And we have plenty of stories from that. What are we going to have to do? Are we going back to burning our bras? Are we going back to actually chaining ourselves to Westminster to say enough is enough? We've got to make these steps if women's health is going to actually not just close the gap, but actually improve over time, because that helps all of us, doesn't it? That helps children, that helps families, that helps communities, and that helps the economy, which last time I looked, we're in desperate need of some economic growth.
Yeah, there's a few aspects to that. Burning the bras, I'm not so sure about. Good bras, I'd like to get. Better bras, yes. But I think we need to do a couple of things. One is we need to have gender balanced conversations. So break the echo chambers. So that's part of the, Mel, the conversation we were having around, the podcast with the collective, is having those gender balanced conversations. We're bringing males to the conversation and intentionally talking about what action they're taking and what impact it's having. And some of these conversations I have in the background are, slower burners where it's actually talking to men. Well, what's your take? Because you're either part of the problem or solution. If for the first time, some of them are like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, well, now we can talk about it. At least acknowledging that you don't know what to do is a start. We can help. We have lots of ideas and solutions and thoughts, and we can get around the table together. But until we're around the table together, Holly, to your point, there's no point marching to Parliament when we're facing, 100 men in Parliament around the table going, what do we do with women's health? 50-50, to your point on the podcast here, is a balanced conversation is a much better conversation to have. So we have to have more balance around that. And I think for those that are like feeling intimidated by, oh my God, women are trying to take us down from the ladder. We're not about that. We just want to get back that we are saying society is not providing enough for us. There is a massive imbalance that we need to fix, and we want to be part of the solution. We're here to help the solution, but we think differently. Our physiology is different. Our neuroscience is different. The way we walk through society is different. The way we experience life is different. So we have to be at the conversation level in order to think strategically from the top down. Because right now, if you look at most boards and companies, is it balanced? Absolutely not. Strategy tables, are they balanced? Absolutely not. Government, are they balanced? Absolutely not. So the balance isn't at the top. And if the balance is at the top, it's hard to produce solutions for every one of us that are out in the street going, I want something to access me for, be it at school, be it at work, be it on the way to work. We need the solutions, and we have a bigger inactivity crisis for women, and we need better solutions. And that can only happen by having engagement with strategy level and being like, let us be part of the solution. We are here to help. We're not trying to pull you out of your seat, but we want to be sitting next to you. And that's what we need to do more of that.
Do you think this conversation's become more difficult in the last couple of years? Because when I look at those echo chambers and the kind of conversations that's happening, particularly around women's sport, maybe less around activity, but the whole conversation around gender feels like it's becoming very loaded, almost toxic in places. And what I'm seeing is that actually women are starting to argue with women about what's important for women. And I don't want to get into all of the nuances with that, just more kind of generally, is that your perception? Is that what you're seeing? Is that what you're feeling, that the conversation is becoming more difficult to focus it through that whole gender lens?
Yeah, I think if you look at like the business world, 40 years ago, there was a seat at the top potentially for one woman, and it wasn't like we were all welcome. There was one. So there was always an element of we have to kind of climb on someone else's shoulders and keep them down to get up there. We don't have that situation anymore. And at least we shouldn't have. We need to work together. And I agree with you, this toxic conversation. And we even have the words being bandied around, toxicity around, diversity is now a bad word. Quality, equity are bad words. Masculinity, femininity. I'm like, these are all just words. Let's put down the negativity and go, we all want to live in a better, healthier, more equal world. And that's a good thing for everybody. And we need to open the conversation in a way that's collaborative. And what I need isn't the same as what everyone else needs. I get that. Like we are still a complex society. We're a complex population. It's not the same things we need. So and that's okay. But until we are working together, we're going to end up chewing each other's ears off as opposed to the people that need to be the ones that need to be listening, who have the control. So I agree with you, Holly. I prefer us to not be negative towards other parts of society or populations. We need to be positive and work towards positive conversations for solutions and be solution focused. Yeah, because us bickering amongst ourselves in any shape or form is not helpful. We have enough of it's counterproductive, and society already is. Then it's like it's only ammunition to look at women arguing again. That's not what we're about, and not what we should be about. And we need to be very conscious of that. We're here. We should be here to support each other. I'm a massive believer for pregnancy and health, for example, and women's health and activities. Like I've never had that experience, but I'm happy to be an absolute champion and to be the one shouting about that for everybody else. And I think we all should be taking up that position of we're here together, and one good thing for one person is good for all of us. And it's not about pulling out someone else down intentionally.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you a gift. Your gift today is to be Prime Minister. When you are Prime Minister, what are you going to change and why are you going to change it? This is my gift to you, Grace.
I love it.
You can give Keir Starmer a day off. I think he's possibly due one. So there you go.
Well, I would first with the budget side of things. I'd definitely start with the budgeting and look at what does not give a good return on investment. If we come from the business angle, every investment should give a good return on investment. Preventative care is got the greatest bang for buck. And I appreciate we're still firefighting at the cold face, but preventative care is a much bigger, greater bang for buck. So we have to invest in lifestyle medicine. Exodus medicine is one that I was working on a lot. That needs to be invested in. And then it just needs to be prioritized, because the reality is we're still skirting around the edges there. If I was to be controversial around it, which I am often, to be fair.
Go on then.
I would be more calling out what's not working. Like if we're talking about, gender balance and about strategies that need to be balanced in order to cater for representation across the whole society, let's just call bad. And let's stop investing in more strategies that aren't working for everyone. If the last one didn't work, whoever designed it didn't do a good enough job. Let's call that out. A little bit of whatever the team was is not working. So yeah, I'd be a little bit more critical and a little bit more honest around not everyone's good at their job. Not everyone's put together a good strategy. Let's be blunt about it, and let's rethink it, and let's start again. And let's rethink with a different brain, different representation, different panel, different group, and start again and really be clear on what the problem we want to solve is, which is health. I mean, from a health perspective here, obviously, if we look at a population where women feel underserved, women are more inactive, let's reset. Let's call that out and be like, it's not good enough. What we've done for 30, 40, 50 years hasn't worked. So let's be super clear on that, and get more balance in the conversation. I mean, if you look at any government, let's be fair, the vast majority of governments aren't balanced representative of the population, and they should be.
And the thing is, Grace, that's not an opinion, is it? That's fact. That's the data. The data is showing that. And I think it's really interesting if you look here in the UK, we have a women's health strategy that was produced by the previous government. I think this government is going to continue on that line, but I don't think physical activity plays a particularly prominent role in there. So I think there's some real work to be done there. And when you look at where the investment is outside of health going into physical activity, movement, sport, there is no women's strategy.
Yeah.
And I think there's just some fundamental problems with that. So if we don't actually understand the problem we're trying to solve, and we're not putting the strategies and structures and the investment then obviously following behind that, then I fail to see how we are going to make progress. And I think you're right. I think we have to start saying what isn't working, because everyone's talking about what could work. But actually, we have to make some fundamental changes. And certainly, and it is in the title of our podcast, we are advocating for a change in the way that investment is made from government and things like lottery funding here in the UK. So at the moment, we know women aren't receiving 50% of that funding. And your argument, Grace, is that we should be over-indexing on that funding. We should be looking beyond the 50-50. But I fail to see until we even create that conversation, because I don't think that conversation's happening. I know women in sport here are looking for gendered budgeting, but we are going further. We were saying we need that at least 50-50 kind of funding. I think until we start that conversation, I think we're going to struggle to even make some of the basic steps.
I think this is where possibly someone like myself and some of our other network can help here, because like I have no invested interest in the UK government funding more activities for sports. I appreciate when somebody's applying for funding, they're often trying to cajole and get the person on the right side. Whereas someone like myself can go, actually, Bob's job is not doing his job properly. He needs to be called out because that's not good enough. So I think we need to stand up for each other a little bit better across the board, maybe. Because if you're in the system and you're trying to apply for funding and you're trying to get through grant system proposals, you do have to dance a line. You're trying to be nice at the same time as saying, please give us money. We can spend it well and it'll be less impact. So you can't at the same time be like, you're not good enough. You're not good enough as a leader in your role to deliver on society and to deliver on the promises that you've made at government level. So maybe we need to do that more, because that's where I think we trolling and saying everyone's doing a great job and backslapping hasn't worked. It's not going to start working. So maybe, Holly, I need to sit down and look at what parts of the government in the Arab world that don't impact me, kind of start poking the bear a little bit and get our network to do it, because we do need to just look at stop it. There's an element of stop certain things. What do you stop? What do you start and what do you continue? And actually, a really great guy I've talked to recently from the UK made this super clear to me. We're talking about board decisions. It's very clear sometimes. What do you stop? What do you start? And what do you continue? Every single thing you put through a lens of that. And I think we're often making it too complicated and being like, we're going to get to this great future in 10 years time and 20 years time and long-term investing. That's great. But for now, what do we stop? And part of it is stop pretending like the last strategy worked. Sure, it didn't.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the point you're making is around that actually, if women come together and really use what they actually have available, we're smart, right? We understand this. We lead busy lives, we manage families, jobs, we manage dynamics, we manage the money, we do all of those things incredibly well. So actually, if we can employ those skills between us to actually advance women, because I think at the moment, some of that gendered toxic conversation actually is quite dangerous, because I think it's being weaponized actually. So I think it's stopping women coming together and having that collective conversation. But we're with you. I know you're with us. Let's go and march to where, I don't know yet, but we can kind of figure that out. But Grace, I'm sure we could probably spend all day talking about this subject. It's been incredibly interesting and incredibly fascinating. Just the very last question, because I'm sorry, we're going to have to end the podcast there, is you obviously love being active. You feel the benefits of being active. What advice would you give to any woman that's listened to this conversation, felt kind of inspired, thinking, yeah, I am going to sit down and look at my schedule. I am going to kind of make a change. What advice would you give them listening now?
Say no to certain stuff. Just start to say no more often so you can say yes to things you know you want to say yes to. So say no to watching the TV, or say no to picking up someone's present, or say no to going to do the shopping on a Sunday. Say no to those things and start saying yes to, I'm going to take 10 minutes and I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to take 20 minutes and go to the gym or whatever. So say no to stuff. I think we have to reassess our entire situation. Say no to some things so you can say yes to things that you know you want to say yes to. It's very harder to do.
That's awesome. I love that. What brilliant advice.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. It's been an utter pleasure. I know the woman that connects us, Emma Mason, at the end of the conversation, I think with her and you and this, we say amen. So thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely amazing.
Oh, thank you both. An absolute pleasure. And yes, we'll continue the conversation. Lots more to have.
Thanks, Grace. Awesome. Speak to you again soon.
Oh, Holly, that was such an amazing episode, wasn't it? An episode so rich in information and I think a lot of inspiration. But the one thing that I reflect on is 4% of women globally doing sport. I mean, it's just inconceivable, isn't it? You think it's small, but when it's put into that figure, 4%, blimey, we've got a lot of work to do.
That's a global figure, isn't it? And I think that really stood out to me. I mean, really, it was an epic in so many different ways. There was so much in that conversation with Grace. I think we're going to have to come back to it. For me, that whole root cause, systemic and the individual was really fascinating as a conversation, actually, because I think maybe people are quite familiar with the conversation about the systemic problems, the lack of investment, the misogyny, the kind of barriers that we're kind of familiar with. But actually, there's also a part for us as individuals to play in this conversation. And I challenged her a bit on that, about actually how easy it is for women in particular to actually make time to be active. That was great. She had a great answer for that, and really, really kind of interesting.
I think one of the other things that I loved, and I've already used it to others, is you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. It's very simple, isn't it? And I think we talk too much about the latest insight, the latest research, but we don't clarify, are you the problem or are you the solution? It's a great way of thinking about this topic and subject very simplistically, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, on a similar line, she talks about echo chambers. And we kind of know that we live in this social media echo chamber, but actually, I think what it made me think about is that we are our own echo chamber, literally, not just on this podcast, well, probably on this podcast, but actually we're all having conversations about this with the same people, probably have similar views about it, have the same desire to make change. But actually, because we're just talking to ourselves, maybe that's part of the reason that we're not actually able to make some of the changes. What did you make of her prime ministerial changes that she wanted to make?
I think she's got great opinions, and I think it's very easy to say things. I genuinely think that if she was Prime Minister, she would implement them and she would do it with full passion and purpose, and she'd make a massive change. And she's got a lot of guts, hasn't she? And that's so important, to not just say something, but know that she would do it. She did say to me privately she would build an Olympic-sized swimming pool in the back of 10 Downing Street as well. So vote for her is what I say. Vote for Grace.
I think we're going to see a theme here of what is going to give voting confidence on your side. She was very direct, actually, and I love that. It's everything that we want this podcast to be. We want it to be direct, challenging, factual. And she said, these were her words, and they've burnt a hole in my brain. Actually, we need to stop investing in the strategies that don't work. We need different brains, different representations, a different plan. And really, that probably means we need to rethink about this problem and start again. And I thought it was pretty bold. She also sort of made me think twice, actually, about our podcast title, because we have called it the 50-50 What is Possible podcast. And that's all about trying to get equality of funding for women around sport and health and activity. But what she was saying was, actually, it needs to be more than 50%, because women have been so underfunded and underinvested that actually we should be asking for more. So I love that about Grace. She wasn't prepared to settle for 50-50. She wanted more. She had a good argument for it. And we're really excited to hear what you all think about that episode. What jumped out to you? What did you agree with? What do you think was challenging? Would you vote for Grace as Prime Minister? We'd love to know your comments.
And we're now going to call it the 90-10, What is Possible, in dedication of Grace McNamara. But yeah, please let us know what you think. Obviously, tell everybody about the podcast and help us make the change that we so desperately need. Let's turn that 4% into 14% and then flourish to 40% plus. It's a big job that we've got, haven't we? But we will do it. And together, we definitely have got this.
Yeah, let's do it.